We would chant 108 rounds of a mantra or a couple of the mantras that we were learning. And over the course of those 108 rounds, the energetic experiences that unfolded in that shala were at least as powerful as what I'd experienced in the years before in the sexual tantra school.
Hey guys, welcome to our SoulFam Podcast, where I interview space holders from all over the world. I'm your host, my name is Karolina, and I am the Connection Catalyst. I help spiritual entrepreneurs experience deeper connection with themselves, with others, and with the whole universe. Today on the show, we have Drew, the lifelong Embodiment Adventurer. Welcome to the show, Drew. How are you doing?
Great. Good morning. Hi, Karolina. Hi, everyone. I'm doing great this morning. Thank you. I'm waking up in the West Country in England. Sun's shining. Birds are out. We're coming into summer solstice here. And yeah, everything's really good. Energy is ascendant and nature is in full bloom. So loving it. And a real pleasure and
Oh,
privilege to be here with you today.
yes, I am super excited to talk to you as well. It's a privilege for me
Hmm.
too. And the topics that we're going to explore, like Eros and intimacy and ecology as well, are very close to my heart, all of them, because I'm actually a master of sustainable energy. Not many people know that, but because I
Mm.
don't do it for
Mm.
work. But yeah, I finished, I'm very much into sustainability and ecology and just making everything great for Mother Earth and to really care about her. So I'm really happy to have you today. And I'm really curious how you mix all these themes. But before we jump into that, I would love you to share a little bit of your backstory. How did you get into being an embodiment adventurer, as you call yourself? What has started your
Mm.
journey? What has inspired you to be on this path?
Thank you. Master of sustainable energy.
Yeah.
I'm still hanging on to that little moment there. It was the first thing that came up for me is like, oh, you're a Jedi, right? Gotcha. But I'm assuming that's a title you got from some university studies or so on.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
but I think I think that like the practice of mastery around sustainability in energy, whether it's our own internal energy or working with energetic systems of the planet, if there is any difference between those two things, is kind of the key thread that runs through a lot of my work and my play and my life. And I say, an embodiment adventurer because while I've studied many things, I don't have a title. I haven't taken I don't have a title that feels like it encapsulates what I do. What I have done is put myself through as many experiences, walked as many paths, spoken to as many people as I can in my life, and had many adventures. I've often I feel like I share or practice from a place of like having made 10,000 mistakes. People will say, Bruce Lee or others will say, oh, you want to become good at something, do it 10,000 times. I've probably made at least 10,000 mistakes on my adventures. And if there are some lessons or some experiences or some dots that have been joined along the way that support me in living a fuller, more connected, more ecological life, and in some way I can offer those out in service to others, then yeah, that's my reason for showing up on this call with you today. So, um, yeah, that's why I call myself an embodiment adventurer. And when I was born into a quite an interesting lineage or set of lineages. My father was a pornography dealer, and my mother was a yoga teacher. So I was born into a world that had a very strong sexual current with a lot of shadow, with a lot of hypersexualization, with a lot of eros. Not no very little mastery, but there was a lot of it, and also into a lineage that was originally an Iyengar hatha yoga lineage, but I've been on my mat since I was 9 years old, and that was many years ago, several decades ago. So growing up through a family that was attempting to hold these two seeming paradoxes, and my life has been felt a lot like a kind of a karmic um, releasing from these two spaces, and also a place of like weaving, and perhaps that's one of the understandings of the word tantra is the warp and the weft, the weaving together of the of one of the spiritual lineages and this sexual lineage in in such a way as I've traversed a lot of my shadows, got stuck in a bunch of them, released a few of them, and have found myself in a place where, hopefully more than not, I'm able to remain in presence and consciousness to a lot of the energetics around these practices, and I'm starting to find out how to reclaim Eros for my own kind of internal energetic generation in such ways I can be in intimacy with myself, in intimacy with other people, in intimacy with the planet, and with mystery. And ultimately they're all the same thing, it seems. So I don't mean to we have an expression in England to tell your grandmother to suck eggs, but for many of the people watching this, that might be a bit of a duh, yeah, of course kind of moment. But there is also, I think, at least in my life, the difference between kind of knowing it and really feeling it, being embodied with the practice of self, other, life, and the mysteries. So yeah, these are some of the perhaps the stories and journeys and experiences that I show up with today. How's that?
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, that's great that you are on this path, and I love how you say I made 10,000 mistakes, so now I kind of like can share something with people. Like, okay, learn on my mistakes, don't have to make yours. It's pretty cool how you say it, because so many people would be like, oh no, I've gone on this journey, I've healed, I have this and that, but like they don't actually admit that everyone makes mistakes, and I feel like mistakes are the path to success as well, because we are learning so much, and failure is actually just just the path to success. So I really love how you expressed it, and I would love you to share also the definition of eros, because maybe some people have not heard this specific word that listen, because I don't know, we have some audience that are just starting on their spiritual journey, some of them that are already many years into that, but just for these guys that maybe don't know.
Great, thank you. I've been asked that question many times, and I seem to have a slightly different answer each time. So, but what eros means to me, it's the word, as I've tracked it, comes from the ancient Greek, and it's one of the, maybe not the original gods, but I think Eros and Eros were the twin brothers of one of the first Greek meta gods. I'm forgetting a lot of my classical civilization here. And so this was, Eros was the god of unrequited love, unfulfilled love, and his brother Anteros was the god of fulfilled love. And quite quickly, they became kind of humanized into this sort of love relationship with another human. And Eros kind of became this figure of like the great poets and the great painters, and the love that will never be met, and the longing, and this kind of brokenheartedness, and so on. But I find that, and it feels like it was more originally intended to be this more of a longing for union, more of a longing for a union with life, and with the sacred, and more in a kind of a in the way that it might have been used by the Sufi poets Rumi and Hafiz and so on. This love song, for this longing for the union with all that is, with love. And so for me, Eros has this quality, excuse me, of this ongoing. It's almost like a guiding light, like a signpost that calls us into union with ourselves and with others. And there's also this quality, again, I've already referenced Star Wars with the Jedi moment, but there is something about this, the life force, erotic life force, which is the generative principle, which is the energy that fuels our cells, whether it's bioelectrical energy, or whether it's chi or prana, or all these different terms we have for this kind of living energy within our cells that comes through us, that is transmitted through the universe, that we can in some way learn how to cultivate, whether it's through diet, nutrition, ice baths, good breathing, or certain breath practices, yoga, tantra, etc. So we can in some way learn to cultivate it. We can learn to notice it within ourselves and turn towards it. And even the practice of just noticing more seems to give us a greater access to our then capacity to build it, harvest it, and it seems direct it, intentionally. And this kind of comes into the realm of what may be called sex magic, or manifestation, or eros magic, or maybe it's just like where we put our attention. we seem to build things. And with your vision for SoulFam, for example, and we started this conversation with a prayer, if you like, and a sharing of intention and so on. And all of your energy, or so much of your energy, is going towards this vision of creating SoulFam, and so your life force energy is being put into this. There is a crucible and an intention and the attention to an intention to build this this dream, this vision you have. So for me, this is this is sex magic, Eros manifestation in practice. You're taking your life force and you're building this community, this beautiful vision. So in my world, Eros is a very broad school, and because of my particular dual lineages of yoga and hypersexuality, I suppose there has in a lot of my life path been quite a sexual element to the flavor of Eros that I've worked with, and so if I may say a little bit about that, the
Please.
first 15 or so years of my life, I was entirely orientated towards ecology. I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was younger, studied biology. I was just born into the water, so I was forever snorkeling, scuba diving from the age of 8, free diving from, well, as a child without really knowing what I was doing, but free diving on a line for the last 20 years, having realized that by taking off the scuba equipment, holding a breath and entering into the water, profound physiological effects happen in the body, and our bodies remember when we were waterborne mammals, and there's an incredible connection that happens both internally and with underwater life when we free dive. So and over those years in the, let's say, late 80s, early 90s, I also, and since, there's been so much death and destruction of the coral systems underwater, such a change of the aquatic environment, overfishing, fish stocks, the devastation that's happening under the waters as well as to the forests and the animals above the water, that I was just getting increasingly heartbroken about the state of the planet. And so I kind of came to this belief that I kind of pendulums between, we're running out of time, we've got to save the planet. We've got to forget about people. There's no time to change people. We've got to save the planet. And then feeling like we can't save the planet unless people change themselves. So I moved from being a biologist to being a massage therapist. I studied holistic therapy and got into working with people. I then swang back in the other direction towards running an organic clothing business. And that was, we were working with hemp fiber, cannabis hemp fiber, particularly because the hemp plant has a huge capacity for positive impact in the planet. However, for whatever reasons we choose to believe, cannabis has been illegal for, or at least prohibited in many areas of the planet for about 100 years now. So hemp as an ecological crop was removed from the marketplace because of this legislation. And the bringing back of hemp as a kind of a key crop for oil, for fiber, for carbon capture, for building materials, and so on. So I went into sustainable clothing, and then that took me into working with groups of people, and I went back into kind of human potential movement, and started to engage with personal development trainings that were more erotic and more sexual, neo-tantric. Meeting some of the kind of the more well-known communities out there, and also some quite esoteric and well-hidden practitioners. So I've gone from, I suppose, something like Ista, for example, which is one of the most well-known and mainstream neo-shamanic sort of tantric lineages out there, off to practicing with people who had spent one particular teacher I've had the great blessing of practicing with, who was 12 years hidden in the jungles of Bali, and keeps an extremely low profile, and does pretty much everything they can to avoid being known or seen by the world. So having these different flavors of working with the planet and then working with people, and of course at the end of the day is it all comes back to being the same thing. But in terms of the work that I do, I've come to an understanding of Eros now that well, I also spent 20 or so years in kind of the, shall we say, the less conscious or maybe the less present erotic circles. So I was a part of kind of the swinger communities, the sex party communities in the UK and Europe. I was part of the BDSM community in the UK and Europe. And about 12, 15, 14 years ago, I trained in something called psychosexual somatics, and then went on to train also in sexological bodywork, which you may have heard of. It's quite a well-known and a profound and incredible body of training work to do with healing and integrating a lot of our sexual energy and ways of being with the body, so that we can express, we can integrate, we can regulate our nervous system, stay within our parasympathetic systems, and increasing our capacity to hold sensation. And with sexological bodywork, it's mostly about erotic sensation or Eros flow, but it's also, takes in the larger understanding of Eros. And that feels to me to be kind of the key practice of many spiritual traditions, and the spiritual traditions that informed many of the major religious traditions on the planet today. Is at their essences, they are a set of practices designed to have us be able to cultivate the capacity to hold greater sensation. So even before pleasure, or even before we get to this choice between comfort and discomfort, or pleasure and pain, a lot of the original practices are about, can we stay present to the sensation in our body without turning away, without distracting, without needing to eat or fuck or take drugs or have a dance or do all these things that, to a certain extent, increase the possibility of us losing our present connection with the sensational movement in our bodies. So through all of these different paths and passageways, whether it's Eros or sexuality or tantra or ecology or the state of the planet, or the conversation I'm having with someone in the street in central London, most of my training and the work that I now do is to do with how can we hold sensation in the body. And as we can learn to hold more and more sensation, how can we offer that in service to connection, life, love, nature, the planet, and ultimately ecology.
Um, is there anything that you would like to share based on your experience with this person? Like, what was your biggest takeaway that you got out of spending time with this person who was hidden in the jungle for 12 years? Because that's something that not many people get to experience in terms of being around this kind of person, and I'm quite sure that they have a lot of wisdom to offer from this journey.
I'm not sure I'm going to share the biggest, but I'll share the most obvious one that hit me the hardest in the years after I had those encounters. I'd previously spent 4 or 5 years in a neo-tantra school in Europe that was very sexual. It was very energetic. It was one of the most powerful crucibles I'd ever been in my life, and we used a lot of physical sexual practice to build energy in the body, to open parts of the body, to move energy in the body. It was, and it was a wonderful school, very full of light and shadow, full like a very crazy wisdom practice, um, and one of the principles around it, or around the teachings, were by we had to liberate a lot of the energy that was tied, knotted in the base of the body, caught up in sexual fantasy and in bad sexual habits, or in certain sexual habits, maybe I should say, and like the tightness in the base of the body. And so a lot of the practices in the school were about loosening, softening, opening, moving the energy and the sexual energy in the base of the body, so that we had access to it for prayer, for meditation, for service, for life purpose. And it was really a kind of an idea of building the fire under the cauldron, and then using the released energy. And it was wonderful. It was insane. It was batshit crazy. It was some of the most beautiful, tender, explosive experiences I ever had. And when I left the school, I had to go and lie on a beach in Bali for a couple of years to kind of rebuild and recover my nervous system. So I am a bit like a moth to a flame when it comes to intense experiences. At least I had been through my life up to that point. So coming back to your question, in this school, I had some of the most powerful, energetic experiences of my life. Like, again, to reference Star Wars for a third time, there was Jedi stuff going on in that school, and the teachers and the lead teacher just had such capacity. and Jedi Sith stuff going on. There was really like intense energetic capacity in the school. Um, and most of the experience I had were very rooted in this physical, sexual practice, like the sexual yoga that we did. Um, but it led up to having just explosive experiences in my body, explosive experiences in my mind, like dissolution of any sense of ego self for short or longer or long periods. I mean, insane and wonderful. And then a few years later, when I found myself practicing with this person in Bali, our primary vehicle for transmission and for opening were mantra. And we would sit in a circle. No one would touch anyone. Everyone was fully clothed, and we would start. We'd start with some puja, some hatha yoga practice, soft, gentle, slow, arriving, just really mellow. The opposite actually to a lot of my previous experiences. And we would chant. We would chant 108 rounds of a mantra or a couple of the mantras that we were learning. And over the course of those 108 rounds, the energetic experiences that unfolded in that shala were at least as powerful as what I'd experienced in the years before in the sexual tantra school. And so my biggest takeaway was like I didn't need intense, extreme sexual experiences to open my body, that actually just using the power of just a softly sung mantra held in the right field with depth of presence, and of course the transmission of the teacher um, would facilitate the same kinds of openings and energetic experiences and harness the same power. And without sharing like too much of what happened in that period of 108 repetitions, like everything dissolved and reformed. And so that was huge. I mean, afterwards I was like, I could say that I wouldn't have been able to have experienced that had I not experienced the years before, but I don't think that's the case. I just, because I saw others come to that circle and go through the similar experiences, it doesn't, in my world and in the West, many of us are experience junkies, peak experience junkies. A lot of my friends are doing ayahuasca to integrate their last ayahuasca journey, and it's like, okay, what can I jump off, inject, skydive out of? What massive experience can I have this weekend, in the name of like bigger, faster, greater, more powerful, more. This, and there's an addictive dopamine, serotonin quality to that. And my experience again in these sits were that it was in exactly the opposite direction, relaxing, 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 as just letting go, surrender, give it up to God, surrender, surrender. And that for me is very paralleled with my free dive practice, which is the same piece. The the greater my capacity to relax into the discomfort equals the deeper I can dive, the longer I can stay under, and the more profound my experience. So I suppose my life took a bit of a 180 degrees between those points, going from chasing and running towards intensity to surrendering into the softness of intimacy.
Wow, I loved everything that you shared. And I really believe that there are different paths to actually achieve the same thing, right? One can be very intense and we can take some plant medicine and be, yeah, very intensely work on our sexual energy and so on. And one can be a more relaxed path in a way that we can really drop into our body and relax. And I can relate to that because for me, when I start my day, I relax because I'm a very intense person. So I'm very go, 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 and action and so on. So when I relax in the morning, it gives me more space because it opens my energy channels in my body. So relaxation is equally as important as intensity, right? And when we can open the channels and really embody the energy of the divine with open channels, and also through creating a lot of sexual energy or life force energy in our body, we also can open the channels. It's just a different way to do that, but it's so important to do it, to be the channel between the divine and the earth, because we are here as vessels. Humans are vessels to bring the God's energy, divine energy, into our body and into the earth, and for this energy to flow through us and within us. And so when we can create it with, sexual transmutation, or when we can relax and let this energy flow, these are both of these ways are very, very beautiful. And so I would love to explore more of this relationship between Eros and ecology, because I feel like it's really crucial to know how to work with this energy to really help earth, to serve the earth, because we need to come back to our natural state of being, to taking care of our mother, our earth, because I know that if we don't do it, it might not be very good for us. So, how can we serve the earth? How can we use the Eros to be more ecological and to be of service to our mother earth?
Yeah, I'm very curious too, how we can best do this. I think I'm probably paraphrasing Jeff Goldblum or someone here when I suggest that whatever happens in our lifetimes and in the next few generations, human generations, life is going to survive, but humans may not. And that again, I'm gonna yoink a line from the very powerful teacher and comedian Bill Hicks when he said that um, perhaps humans are just a virus with shoes. We have the capacity to overconsume and destroy and just keep consuming until there's way beyond our needs, way beyond our you know our what's necessary for life, and just to accumulate and store our egoic plays of bigger cars, bigger houses, bigger jobs, bigger dicks, bigger boobs, bigger this is, or smaller that, smaller that, smaller that. And this kind of plugs very much into this ecology question for me. A master of sustainable energy. I'm staying with that because I think it speaks directly to like the fulcrum of what I'm interested in. I also spent some time with again when I was living in Bali, with an Australian man who took me through a series of protocols, health and well-being protocols, twice daily ice baths, naked sunlight exposure to red light spectrum in the morning and in the evenings, pitch black sleeping at night, a local, appropriate, pretty protein-based diet, and very, very low electronic light exposure. So no phone screens and laptops in the evenings and the mornings, like very limited Wi-Fi exposure and so on. And it was like a mitochondrial reboot that had a profound impact on my body. Profound impact on my body. It was like plugging my internal energy generation system back into the power grid and turning it on. After a few weeks and months of doing these practices, I had so much energy in my body. I couldn't give it away fast enough. It was just upwelling in me. And the other times where I have access to this quality of energy, this quantity and quality of energy, is when I'm doing a certain set of kind of yogic, tantric, and sexual practices that tend to involve some physical things, ejaculating less, having kind of like holding myself away from peak orgasm for periods of time, weeks and months sometimes at a time, breathing in certain ways, orientating towards my lovers in certain ways, or towards myself in my own sexual practice, some mindset, like which drishtis do I choose? What are my gaze points? How open is my heart? How open is the base of my body? How much am I moving the energy and in rapport with my partners or myself? And also, like, what's my orientation in that moment? Am I orientating to give of myself, or am I orientating to take? And how conscious and present are we in this giving and taking? Because there's a beautiful, what feels like an elegant and an artistic way in this kind of polarized yin and yang of when one is giving, the other is receiving, which is in my experience, a profound and generative dance exchange of giving and taking, like the tango of lovemaking. Or there's this. So when these things are all combined, like the certain set of physical health practices that has my energy being generative, and I'm so much so that it's easier for me to be cleaner in my interactions, because I don't have this energy deficit, which I've had chronic fatigue in my life. I've had a lot of like physical exhaustion in my body and overwhelm and burnout. Sometimes there's like this, my battery is so flat that unconsciously or maybe even consciously I've sought to take energy from others, whether it's by drinking a coffee or by engaging in certain emotional or relational entanglements that feed me, give me energy. But when I've gone through these practices, when I'm living my life in a certain way, I have so much energy coming up that I can move into connections with others and run less game under the surface, leave less hooks in. And there's just feels like there's much more of an energetic exchange. And I also find that profoundly in every other aspect of my life, I'm consuming less, I'm wanting less, I'm needing less, I'm feeling less needy and clingy for stuff. I don't care about a new pair of trousers or a new pair of trainers or the latest movie out or whatever these other things are, because I'm much more inclined to sit in the very gentle, slightly sexy, hummy, fizzing sensations in my body. And which I think is my capacity to sense Eros, life force energy, as it moves through my sense gates. This is probably not rocket science for anyone, but looking at how suppressed, oppressed, and denied sexuality and Eros has been in human history, whether it's through church, religion, state, the overwhelming shame that a lot of us feel around our sexual energy, our Eros rising. Like we have somehow learnt, been taught, taken this position that we have to suppress, repress, or deny our sexuality, many of us. And a lot of this neo-tantric, neo-shamanic consciousness movement is relearning how to connect in a shame-free way to our erotic life force energy, to the energy of life. So to come again back to your question, I believe the more we can do this, the less resources we're going to consume in the planet. The more we realize, we've got these we're masters of our own internal sustainable energy, and we can be within such a way that we don't have to run around consuming, buying, ravishing the earth, like getting the latest phone, the latest this, the latest that, and actually we can take this energy and work with it sustainably in such a way that we can gift it into the world, and gift it into the world through our intention, through our attention to an intention, which is sex magic, which is holding where do we want to send the energy we cultivate. And so this comes back again to this kind of between two camps, the yogic spiritual camp, which has been in the Hatha Yoga tradition and in some of the neo-tantric positions, like quite obsessed with ascendancy. Like can we move our energy up through our baser, dirtier, lower chakras up to these higher chakras? There's this like in the Hatha Yoga tradition there, pre-tantra, there was this kind of, the practices were all about exiting the body through the crown, like getting up Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, up and out the top of the head, back into union. Tantra came along and was like, hey, no, look, let's go down as well as up. We need to, move in both directions for it to be a more whole and integrated system. But then in the tantra and the neo-consciousness communities I move in, most of us are, we're looking upwards, and a lot of us are kind of hitting challenges about getting down into the body, going into the lower, or we're actually overtly, explicitly trying to avoid going there. And then hopping over into sort of the swinger, fetish, sex party communities, and people are, again, I'm generalizing hugely, but there's a lot of hanging out in these kind of sexual, animalistic, strong sensation, like grosser, heavier sensation stuff, lots of orgasms often and ejaculations and big experiences, with less perhaps attention paid to what we can do to refine this energy and to harness it upwards. So we've got a lot of the neo-consciousness movement like going up more than down, a lot of the more sexual movements going down rather than up. And yet there are all these many practices and orientations and way we can be with our Eros to combine those two, where we can get this dynamo spinning, and so that we can cultivate energy incorporate our shadow play with Tantra, with BDSM, we can get into this polarizer by unifying the ascendancy and the descent of the energies into a kind of an internal energy generation machine. We're then able to keep this internal generation happening, producing enough energy for us to not need to consume great resources from the planet. And this is a key part of, in my world, where Eros fuels ecology.
Thank you so much for sharing all that. It kind of brings me to this memory of when I was fasting for a long time. It was kind of the same. I was not using the digestive system. I was not using the energy that I would consume in a way for digestion. And I had so much energy inside of me. And it seems like it's very similar because if you're not, spreading this energy, you're building it up inside of you, then you also don't need that many external factors, external environmental resources, because it's like, okay, if I don't need to eat, then I don't need to consume. Maybe I also don't need as many clothes. Maybe I also don't need as other things that I thought that I would need. And when I was fasting, it's just everything filled me up. Even just going for a walk, even just seeing the trees, even just putting my feet into the river, just small things would fill me up with so much energy that I felt like, okay, I pretty much don't need most of the things in my life. And I was thinking, okay, I can just go to Bali, just sleep on the ground, eat the fruits from the trees, and I will be fine. I was just having this feeling like, okay, my survival is okay. I'm gonna be fine no matter what. So I feel like it has given me so much energy as well. I was accumulating so much energy, and I feel like it's similar, right? When you accumulate life force, sexual energy, for example, then you're like, okay, I have so much energy, so much is filling me up now that I don't need anything external to fill me up, because I can just connect to myself, I can connect to God, I can connect to my sexuality. And yeah, all these external things are just not as meaningful. Maybe it's about meaning, like they don't mean as much anymore because you're so full inside. So I feel like I can compare it to this feeling that I had, and it was a very, very profound feeling and profound process for me, probably one of the most profound processes of my entire spiritual journey. And I love how we talk about it, because it's actually super interesting that you're coming from yoga and pornography. It's like a very interesting mix, I would say. And it's great that it put you on the path. I mean, you chose your parents for a reason to be on this path of actually spreading the healthy message about spirituality and about sexuality, and combining it all together, which is great. I really love that. But also, I noticed as well, for example, on my ISTA training that I've done like recently, that sometimes, yeah, it's you know, we can come from a very aligned place and do, for example, BDSM stuff from like more fun perspective or more preference perspective. But also there could be a different, as you say, shadow aspect of it, where we actually do it based on trauma only, and based on not feeling enough, and based on filling ourselves up with someone else, and filling ourselves up with some, I don't know, fun we have, rather than actually feeling full and then having a preference to, for example, have some fun. And I realized how energetically you can really feel it around people when they do that, right? You can really feel if it's coming from a place of I'm full and let's have fun, or if it's coming from a place I'm empty and please fill the void with some kind of things. Like even orgasm can fill the void, right? It could be addictive. It could be like, so many people are addicted to pornography because it's like again, the dopamine hit, the oxytocin hit, the other hormonal hits, right, that it gives us. And so I think it's really important to also bring light, bring awareness to that, because I don't think there's anything wrong with BDSM as long as it's fun, as long as it's really our preference to do that, and it's coming from a place of like, yeah, okay, I want to explore this, rather than, oh, I need this because in my childhood, for example, I want to be submissive because in my childhood I never could let everything go and I always had to take responsibility, I always had to be in control, so now this is the only reason why I want to do this. I feel like pretty much, in my view, almost every fetish is kind of coming from a trauma. I really believe that, because if you have like a very big craving for something, then it usually stems from you just trying to meet your needs that you didn't meet in childhood, right? So I've been exploring this topic of fetishes and where they come from. Like, and I can see in myself, like, in bed, I sometimes like to be submissive, not massively. I don't have to, but I like it because, and one of the reasons is because my father was really controlling, and I feel like I had to, and my mom, because he left, had to take a lot of responsibility, and she had to step up, be more in a masculine energy. So I was kind of like shaped to also be responsible and take control and so on. So now I like to let go of control completely, and I like to let my partner just be dominant and guide me rather than me having to guide, or me having to take responsibility, or me having to. Or and another thing that my number one mentor said in her video about fetishes is that it's kind of like people who like to be abused or submissive, they actually want to feel that even though they are weak, they are still loved in their weakness. Even though they let go, they are still loved. And so I can see this very slightly in myself, but I can see that it's actually true, that this comes from some kind of unhealed wound. So I feel like I'm very much into fun. So for me, it's also very funny when I can be in a, let's say, submissive mode and someone can be in dominant mode. It's fun. So I can see that, okay, I have awareness of what could be playing out in my subconscious mind, why I prefer that. But like, if you bring awareness to it, it's like, okay, I can choose to do this, I can choose also not to do this, and I don't have to do this, I don't need it, because I'm full inside, and I can create a lot of sexual energy inside, and I can fill myself up, and I can meet my own needs, but I can still have fun and do it if I want to, or role play or whatever else sexually I want to do there, but not from a place of I need this to heal, or I need this to whatever fill myself up, but from a place of, okay, I'm full within, I have awareness of what it can be created from, and I'm still choosing to do this or not to do this, and then do it in a more conscious and spiritual way, spiritual quote unquote, because everything is spiritual. So it's quite funny to use this word. But anyway, I feel like everything is God. In whichever way you express yourself, it's still God. It's still an expression of the divine. So if you want to do this or that, it's all fine. But I am very big advocate for awareness. So I like to bring awareness, even if you have a fetish, if you have something that you really crave, then, feel into it. Is there anything that you can fill yourself up with? Is there any need that is unmet, that is met in unhealthy ways right now? Or is it all coming from you just preferring to experience some things? I just really wanted to share this because I can see it in myself, and I want to bring light to that so that people are more aware of what they are doing, because then we can bring more awareness to other people and to the earth as well. So I just wanted to share that. So what do you think about it?
Mm. Well, I mean, beautiful, Karolina. Firstly, I just want to honor and acknowledge your sharing, and giving some insight, at least to me. I don't know you so well, maybe to some of the viewers, about your own journey through this. Feel much tenderness and care and delight. Some of your own experiences and adventures. And in my, again, my own little partial view, there are many lenses we can look through when it comes to BDSM, or fetish or kink, or what we may call kind of these different polarity dynamics. And I mean, to be very glib about it, like traditional tantra seems to be mostly around working alchemically with our internal yin yang, masculine, feminine, Ida, Pingala, like the different opposite energies for this internal alchemical transfiguration. Neo Tantra seems to be quite involved in kind of externalizing that. So two or more people, so one person saying, "Hey, I'll play this energy, you play that energy, and let's experience the polarity between one person being Shiva, the other being Shakti, or so on. One person holding stillness, the other person holding flow." And a lot of these sorts of explorations are included in kind of the Neo Tantra realm, and this has many amazing insights, and it can also, in my experience and observation, lead into a kind of a neo-tantric codependency, like with certain people always playing this role and other people always playing this role, and this kind of conflation of masculine and feminine and male and female and so on. Unfortunately, we're like, over the last few years, we're seeing much more trauma-informed neo-tantra, and also much more fluid neo-tantra, as it increasingly incorporates people in male bodies practicing and leaning more into surrender And with the essential, much needed prostate work that's going on and male sacred spot work that's going on, more and more and more men are realizing how much energy is available, and how to work with our anuses and our prostates, and to receive a prostate massage. Like, anal penetration is pretty necessary for most prostate sacred spot touch that's received, and for someone in a male body to receive penetration anally, it gives us the opportunity to experience the vulnerability, tenderness, care, challenge that it is to be penetrated physically by another human being in a way that people in female bodies, that's kind of the deal. And so many people in female bodies have had challenging penetrative experiences, as I did in a male body when I was younger. I would often say to groups of people. In fact, I ran a couple of kind of anal play workshops when I was working with one of the larger swinger communities a few years ago, and couples showed up, and they were heteronormative couples, male and female, and I could just read the energy in the room that the guys were like, "Oh, we're going to learn how to fuck our women better in the ass." And as I started by saying, I don't believe anyone should penetrate unless they've had the experience of being penetrated themselves. So we're going to start off this workshop by, guys, you're going to be on the receiving end. And it was glorious and hilarious and really fascinating to see the energy shift in the room, because many of the men, not all of them, but many of them were kind of like, "Oh, fuck, what have I got myself into?" And many of the women were like, "Oh, yes. Okay, let's go." And there's so much tenderness. There's so much healing. There's so much shame. All so involved with like everything from non-consensual penetration we may have received, like from family members, or from doctors, or from medical practitioners. I had a suspected appendicitis a couple of times as a kid, and got fingers up my bum when I was in hospital having that checked out. Had no idea what was happening. So on, there's so many inelegant and unprepared genital examinations that happen in the medical lineages, and of course all the challenges of playing with ourselves and each other when we're kids, and sexual abuse and non-consensual penetration there. So much trauma can be held in the genitals, as we know. So I'm kind of going off tact from the original question, but there's so much healing that can be done around that, and is necessary. And so like in relevance or in context to BDSM, people, in my experience, a lot of people kind of find their comfortable space. I'm a dom, or I'm a sub, or whatever it is, and can kind of constellate unconsciously into that. Like, because I've got X, Y, and Z traits, I'm going to be the dominant, and this person's going to be the submissive. And often it can be unconscious, like someone who assumes a dominant position because they like to control, because they're scared of losing control, as like going back to some of the things you were talking about earlier. Or people who assume a submissive position because they've grown up either having to, like, if it's unconscious, it's like they've grown up out of control, so they're not able to assert boundaries, so they'll get into dynamic relationships with other people who will control them. Or they'll go, okay, well, as a child, I had to be in a controlling position, like you were sharing. So I like to be in a submissive, playful position so I can let go of control. So there's like a relief and a spaciousness and a kind of an allowing of different qualities of your energy to emerge. And so there's intentionality there and consciousness there. And then we can also go into, we can work kind of magically and intentionally, like what ritual are we going to create to embody different archetypes in our fetish, kink, BDSM play? Are we going to bring some dragon energy? Are we going to bring some warrior energy? Are we going to bring some maiden energy? Are we going to bring some goddess energy? And how can we mix all these up to get this cauldron of like delicious archetypal flavors, and like all the instruments we can put in the orchestra to get this big harmony going? And I had the great privilege of doing some study with Dossie Easton, grand matriarch of conscious BDSM, at least in the modern one, who wrote The Ethical Slut, among many other beautiful books. And prior to that, I'd spent 10 years or so working within an organization called the Mankind Project, and they run some very beautiful kind of rites of passage, like modern rites of passage initiation weekends for men, for late teens, boys into through adolescence, along with an organization called a Band of Brothers, and for men. So it's giving us an opportunity, those of us in male bodies, to experience initiatory journeys that we may no longer have access to in the modern world in the way that traditionally we might have done. And they use a model of mythodrama or psychodrama for kind of repatterning negative or limiting experiences. And Dossie rocks up and she uses exactly the same model, but just within a kink fetish paradigm. And when I saw this, I was profoundly touched. I was like, wow, we can, just do the same thing. We can set up, we can sit there and work out like what's the stuff, what's limiting me, where have I been damaged or hold wounds or closures, and how can I recreate or how can I create a ritual, a kinky ritual, where I can recover my power, where I can reclaim those parts of myself that are in shadow, in wound, in separation. And we created some of the most beautiful, powerful, astonishing rituals. And my experience was that afterwards I had more energy. I felt bigger. I felt more range. I was more able to submit without worrying that it meant that I was somehow powerless. In fact, there was huge power in my ability to choose to submit. I learned how to be penetrated. My prostate woke up, through these journeys. And that's for anyone who is listening or watching who has a prostate. My wish for you, my biggest wish almost for you, is that if you haven't already, that you start working consciously with touch and with intention, with practice, to awaken and get your prostate softened, awake, enlivened, and healthy, so that you can harness all of this energy. That's, my wish for anyone listening is that we all have access to conscious, gentle, intentional anal massage. So our anal sphincters, in fact, our internal anal sphincter, many of you probably know this, is that it's kind of the master key to our nervous system. So for all of us who are living in some sort of sympathetic response, which many of us are, with our, like you said earlier, the dopamine and addictions, to whether it's to social media or to the latest pair of shoes or to some drugs or alcohol or sex, or there are loads of intimacy junkies out there, loads of people that I encounter. And I know this well myself. The next workshop, the next hit of intimacy, the next hit of connection, can I go to the next weekend love affair or workshop love affair that we can have? I'm pretty sure many of us have been there. So these are all kind of dopamine hit, addictive, and to a certain extent sympathetic responses. So can we find ways, whether it's through fetish or massage or touch or breath or self-touch, to soothe ourselves and bring ourselves into sympathetic, parasympathetic response, which brings, and those we now know so much about the polyvagal system and the moving the energy around the body, that it seems that a vagus nerve activation is essentially the same thing to a full body orgasm. It's just different ways of saying the same thing, of being as fully in the present moment with our parasympathetic response, opening up the body, cascading energy from our pudendal nerve to our hypogastric to our pelvic and into the vagal system, so that we can experience orgasms in our fingertips or our earlobes or our teeth. I've not yet had a toothgasm, but it's bringing as much aliveness and vitality and activation to all the systems of our body, so that we can liberate what's locked up, what's cast away, whether it's through BDSM practice or mantra or chanting or prostate massage or sacred spot massage or breath work. And like you said, so like you took 1 second to say what's taken me half an hour to say, there are many paths up the mountain. And but awareness, ritual, which for me is attention to an intention, which is perhaps similar to consciousness practice. If we can bring attention to our intentions with these practices, and then offer that energy, offer that cultivated energy to somewhere, something, or someone intentionally, then I think this is harnessing Eros for ecology and sustainability at its fundamental sex magic root. And to that end, one of the foundations I've created is called Alula, which stands for All Loves One, One Loves All. And what we do is, in the ritual Eros practices that we do in the workshops I run and so on, like a percentage of ticket sales and money earned is donated to Alula. And so we're suggesting that money is energy condensed into a transferable asset. So we give some of our energy that we cultivate and harness in our rituals to Alula, and Alula in the form of money, and Alula goes and plants trees and coral. So we cultivate Eros, we donate it or we gift it, and that Eros is planted as trees and coral in the ground. And so that for me is like a very simple but very generous and like non-egoic way of offering our erotic energy for ecology.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Boom. That's amazing. I'm going to leave everyone who listens with all that because I feel like there's a lot of things that people could think about, right? From what you shared right now. But I have one last little question to you. Where could people find you if they would really like to see your content and know more of you? What is the best way
Bless you.
to
Thank you,
contact you?
Karolina. Well, my website is currently drewlawson.net, DREWLAWSON. My Twitter and Instagram handles are Intimate Heart spelled HARTE. And you can search Facebook for Ritual Eros, and you can find the group there. So, and there are links to each other through those things. So, thank you so much for that invitation. And
Thank you so much. I loved this conversation and I love the name Ritual Eros. This is amazing. And I'm all about rituals as well and ceremonies. And I feel like it's so important to set this intention and to really work on ourselves through that. So thank you so much for your beautiful energy and your wisdom flowing to us. I'm really, really grateful that you agreed to be on this
thank you. It's been
podcast.
an absolute pleasure, and thank you for your energy, your questions, your sharing of yourself, and to everyone who's listening. It's deeply appreciated you take time to pay some attention to the messages we've shared today, and may you all have beautiful journeys in Eros.
Thank you so much, beautiful people, for listening to us. I really hope that this conversation has brought you a lot of understanding about yourself and your sexuality. Maybe it inspired you to make it to explore even more because it's really important to harness our sexual energy, normal, to make it widespread, right? And not in terms of spreading with other people, but spreading the knowledge, the wisdom about what we can do with our sexuality is very, very crucial. So thank you, SoulFam Podcast, again for being with us, and stay tuned to the next episode. And PS on Instagram as we are SoulFam. So find us if you'd like to follow. Thank you.